Hello, RWorld. Welcome back to another episode of RWorldTalk. We're going to flip it around and do something a little different with you guys today. I am lucky enough to be joined by Jeff Burns from Affiliated Development. Jeff, you're CEO and co-founder, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, thank you for being with us, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Affiliated Development, you guys have numerous projects across South Florida, ranging from Broward up to Palm Beach County. As a co-founder of Affiliated, what makes your company unique? Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we're developers of multifamily real estate, ground up construction. We're unique because in the multifamily space, there's generally two kinds of developers. There's the luxury market rate developer, and then there's the low-income housing, LIHTC developer that focuses more on affordable housing.
Okay.
We fall somewhere in between. So we build luxury Class A product, just like the market rate guys do, but we offer it a certain portion of the building to be set aside at rates that are more attainable for the workforce.
Okay.
So it's not going to be low income. It's going to be, kind of middle, moderate to middle income.
So a section of workforce housing in the projects that you're building. I'll ask you because we, as an advocacy group, have for years been trying to free up some funds for affordable projects.
Yes.
And ways to help with that. And now, lo and behold, we have the Live Local Act.
Yep.
Have you guys tapped into the Live Local Act, and how is that working for you?
Yeah, I mean, we actually just got a project approved about a month ago through Live Local. We're out there doing numerous deals through the Live Local Act. There's two aspects of Live Local that we're primarily focused on. The first is going to be the tax exemption portion of it.
Okay.
And then the second one's going to be on the zoning and land use side of things.
Right.
As you probably know, a lot of these projects take a long time to go through the approval process, and you get neighbors, coming out that, quite frankly, just aren't necessarily informed about housing and
NIMBYs.
Yeah, right. And most of them actually qualify for workforce housing, and they say, we don't want this housing here. They think we're building Section 8 low income, a project, right? And so that's, to be fair in their minds, that's what they think we're doing, and that's one of the biggest challenges that the guys like us have, which is the NIMBYism. Not in my backyard.
Yep.
We acknowledge that there's a need for this, but we just don't want it anywhere near us. We get people over the hump on that because we build quality luxury product, and we're very, very hands-on in terms of educating people what we actually do. But we are out there utilizing, Live Local to its fullest extent, and doing good, responsible projects. We're not those guys that are out there threatening to build a 30-story high-rise, building next to a single-family neighborhood, which is much of the concern.
Yeah, you get a lot of pushback on that when people think that they're going to now have like you said, a 30-story tower, and everybody's looking into their backyard where they used to have privacy, which is not great. No. So what is your target demographic? Does it vary per project, or are you building the same thing for everyone?
Well, no, it does. It does vary. I mean, we build primarily in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. I would say, depending on the city, we tailor our product, differently depending on where we're building. Okay. But in order to kind of draw a distinction between all of them, I would say that probably the one consistent element that we have is going to be generally young professionals. Okay. So these are folks that are, starting out in the industry, starting out, in their careers, and want a really cool place to live, heavily amenitized. They like going to the fitness facilities and the co-work, and having really a social dynamic in their communities that they live in. But obviously, the ability to pay a reasonable rent and not spend 60% of their income on housing. So I would say our demographic is gonna be young professionals. But recently, we completed a project called The Grand in downtown West Palm Beach, 309 units right off of Rosemary. And that one has some empty nesters, some folks that want to live in the action.
Sure.
And in the city, and so
enjoy the nice restaurants.
Yeah, it's a nice mix. We have families in there as well. I mean, it's really a good mix of everybody.
So you guys are baking right into your projects co-work spaces in those buildings.
Yeah, I would say our biggest focus is our tenants' livable experience.
Okay.
So the apartment development has changed over the years. So an apartment used to be I guess rewind back to, pre-Great Recession, 2003, 4, 5. Well, an apartment is just a stepping stone to home ownership. Most everybody
got to start somewhere.
They wanted to start somewhere. They were like, they weren't concerned about the level of finishes or because it was a temporary stop for them. So the majority of the apartments back then had carpet, linoleum countertops or Formica countertops, linoleum flooring in the kitchens and white standard appliances, and it was a very basic fit and finish.
Right.
After the great financial crisis or the Great Recession, a shift kind of occurred where more and more people were focused on renting versus home ownership and buying, and a lot of that was people became a lot more transient, moving around a lot more with work and whatnot, but. I think a lot of people saw their loved ones get caught in the crisis, and it didn't bode well for them. So,
and we lost a heck of a lot of builders. So I'm glad to see that guys like you that are still around doing stuff.
No, absolutely. And so, these days it's more about the experience. If people want quality finishes, they're not concerned about my unit's 800 square feet or. I really want 900 square feet. They want a well designed, well situated unit with amenities. And so we go crazy on co-work space. Everybody says residential is the new office because most people are working remotely or from home.
Yeah. Huge swing.
Yeah. So we want to give them that social environment. We're doing pub rooms now. So we're actually doing like bars. In our buildings with game rooms.
Okay.
We're doing, of course, fitness facilities. We're starting to do more wellness. So we have cold plunges, infrared saunas, all this other stuff that we're designing into our buildings. So
that's incredible.
Very, very heavily amenitized. And of course, pool, resort style living, which is what people come to South Florida for.
Beautiful. So as a realtor, I know not everybody's ready to purchase a property. We were just talking about, sort of a stepping stone for most people. So most of the projects for rent, do you have any future projects that are going to be listed for sale, or are you guys staying in the rental space?
Yeah, we're in the rental space.
Okay.
That's what we focus on.
Okay. Your projects obviously spread out. You had just mentioned Miami all the way up to West Palm. What's coming up in the future? Where do you see as the new hot spot in South Florida for growth, and why would you say that?
Right. Well, things are definitely pushing north. Yeah. Growth is definitely occurring north.
We see that migration in our trends. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, even now, driving up to West Palm, this 95 didn't, in Palm Beach County, it used to be smooth sailing. Now it's, stop and go traffic.
It took me almost an hour to get here from Broward.
Yeah. It's definitely changing. But, I can tell you that there's probably no city, I would say, in South Florida that's going to experience the transformation quite like West Palm Beach. I think what's happening in West Palm is truly unique and special. The financial services firms that are moving here, all the migration shift that happened during COVID really changed the face of South Florida in general.
I agree.
But I don't think there's any place that's going to experience a change quite as drastic as that in West Palm Beach. And
there's still some land up here.
There's still land. It's harder to come by. There's a handful of people that pretty much own everything.
Right.
So it's harder. The city is still dealing with growth in terms of where they're defining their downtown to be, and they're eventually going to have to rethink that because downtown is getting gobbled up.
Right.
But it's truly exciting. I mean, the demographic of the people that are moving in. Again, these are folks that initially people were thinking, well, maybe they're just going to come down, they're going to beat COVID and wait it out, and then eventually move back. And they came down and they realized what a great quality of life we have here in South Florida, and that business can not only, continue, but probably thrive more in this type of environment than back in the Northeast. And they've made the move permanently. And so I think it's going to have a huge impact on West Palm Beach. We're doing a project in an area called Northwood, which is just north of downtown. We'll definitely be, one of the first buildings to go up there. And so that's an area that we're particularly interested in.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the financial sector that has really been moving down here. I mean, a lot of big business is coming to South Florida. And I think what people up north have realized is when their people came down here during the pandemic and started working, they realized how happier they were.
Yeah.
And happier people are far more productive people. I mean, if you can keep your workforce entirely happy with where they live, where they get to play when they're not working, certainly that's gonna do wonders for your company. What are some key factors that help you narrow down where to develop when you guys are looking around? Sort of what are you looking at? Obviously, land is going to be a significant factor, the ability to access that land. But what else are you guys looking for when you're looking at? Are you taking a peek at demographics, or what does that market look like to you?
So our focus is I would say four things. First is going to be employment centers. I want to be close to jobs. So the average workforce renter commutes 30 to 45 minutes every day each way.
Okay.
For work. So, obviously just experiencing the I-95 situation and all that goes into quality of life and other things. Traffic, anytime you're building a project, a lot of these communities complain about traffic. Well, the reason for that is majority of our workforce has to leave every day, right. So what's happening on, whether it's Okeechobee and West Palm, or, Broward and Sunrise and Fort Lauderdale, well, there's just a max exodus every day. At the end of the day, people leaving the city. So housing our workers close to where they work is critical. So that's our number one thing is employment centers. We're big believers in public transportation. We like to be close to the Bright Line train station. We believe that as the commuter rail starts to become more prevalent, definitely down in Miami, and it's working its way north of the Broward and eventually to Palm Beach, that's just going to be the way of life for people. I mean, my business partner, Nick Rojo, lives in North Palm Beach. Our headquarters is in Fort Lauderdale. He's down a couple of days a week, and the Bright Line is something that we use to connect, on a daily basis. And I think it's going to be, especially this younger generation, people tend to want to use public transportation more and more. So that's another big factor. We want to be close to other high-cost housing, so where we can really compete and be effective in terms of being able to give people the best possible experiences. We want to be close to the restaurants and all the various amenities that the city has, which is generally going to bring the highest rents. And we want to be as close as we can to that and be able to offer people a meaningful difference without changing their lifestyles. And that's the key, is being able to give people the same quality, if not better product, and the same, if not better location.
Okay.
And that way they don't have to change their lifestyles. And that's how we're going to get the best workforce down here, is by giving people good quality product, not by making them live in substandard housing. And that's the key. So those are really the biggest three. The other, I would say, fourth one that we look for is the natural progression of growth. So we're long-term hold guys. We build, we hold. We've not sold a building or a property to this date, but so we like to be kind of on the natural progression of growth. So generally, we're not going to be the guys that go in and buy on Main and Main and pay up for that. We're going to be, kind of right on the edge of where we think the growth is going to eventually occur. And then we hold long-term and let that growth kind of come to us. And that's one of our strategies.
Okay. I asked this question of all of our guests. I know you're a busy guy. We're going to let you get back to work here shortly. I'm going to ask you to basically open up the floor and see if you've got anything that you want to add on what you think is going to be the new hot spots down in South Florida. Actually, let me ask you this. Do you guys have any plans for moving up as far as Port St. Lucie? Because it seems like there's a huge amount of migration that's going up there.
That's right.
Is it too soon for Port St. Lucie?
Well,
project
no, we've looked very heavily in Port St. Lucie. There's a couple of reasons why we've not moved on anything up that way quite yet. One is the differential between market and workforce really isn't quite there yet. So really, it is a workforce community, and that's where the majority of the workers down in Palm Beach County they're commuting already up to Port St. Lucie. Eventually, and just like Palm Beach was, right, growth is going to occur north, and they're going to start to have more of an affordability issue up there. But right now, it really hasn't happened. So we can't really make as great of a difference as we would like to.
Sure.
Port St. Lucie, because it's kind of naturally a workforce location as it is. There's a lot of product up there, too, currently. For us, we would want to be close to the kind of main arteries, right, and off 95. But I definitely think, from a long-term perspective, growth's going to occur, up in the Port St. Lucie and Martin counties, and, things are going to start happening in that direction.
I'm going to go find some land and I'm going to hold on to it for a while. You can buy it from me later.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be wise. And out west too. I mean, there's places like, you look at Indian Town, you look at some of these places that, really are, kind of rural and you wouldn't think that. I think over time, I think that's going to be a real thing. I think people are going to start looking over there.
Yeah, you just got to follow where Brightline's looking around. Start following those guys and see what they're thinking.
Very true.
So I ask this question of everybody that we have on the show. South Florida has many hidden gems across the state, but particularly here in South Florida, where the bulk of our listeners are, whether it's a restaurant, beach, hotel, walking spot, hiking spot, something like that. Anything worth checking out? What's your South Florida gem that you love?
Well, there's one place in particular that I've been going to since a kid, and my parents would bring us down to Miami. I'm from Kansas City originally, from the Midwest, and we vacation down here. And to this day, I take my daughters down there. We love it. It's a little, and it is kind of a hidden gem. It's an alleyway down in Miami. It's become more popular. It's called Le Sandwicherie. It's a great little sandwich place in South Beach. A lot of people know where Club Deuce is, the old kind of dive bar down there off of 13th or 14th, right around that area, in between, Collins and kind of right in that area there. And it's down an alleyway, but it's an amazing sandwich. It's a little French sandwich place. And
did they just open one of those in Brickell?
They have one in Brickell. Yes.
So yes. I just went there. We were down at an event, and our association president was like, "You got to try the sandwich place." I'm like, "Okay, it's a sandwich place. What's the big deal?" And the whole group of us ended up going around the corner from the cigar lounge that we were at and hit that sandwich place, and it was incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's fresh. They use good ingredients. I mean, that's really the key to it. Good ingredients, but that's one of the I guess hidden gems that we like to go to. Trying to think if there's anything else. Being a South Florida resident, one of the unique things that we have here is the ability to access the Bahamas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a lot of my friends from the Midwest, their minds are blown when I tell them I can get on my boat and be in the Bahamas in an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another unique thing that, people need to take more advantage of, is the proximity to,
it's all about that lifestyle.
Yeah. Proximity to the Bahamas. So that's something else that we do quite a bit of as a family.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us all that insight. I'm glad that the Live Local Act is working out for you guys. It's nice to see that somebody is trying to combat the affordability issues that we have and actually dedicate some of the space and what you guys are building to workforce housing is always good to see. So thank you for that. And thank you guys for listening. And we will catch you right back here next time on RWorldTalk.